Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Millennial Pod. The year has only just begun. The releases are kind of light at this stage, but that gives us a rare opportunity to zoom out a little and take note of what's coming ahead in 2026. And there's only one place that conversation can begin. Marvel, baby. Now, 2026 is an interesting year because on paper it looks kind of light. There aren't too many releases compared to a usual Marvel year, but the two releases that we're getting are solid heavyweights. But as I dug a little deeper, there is so much stuff coming out in Marvel this year that you are bound to be excited by the end of this video. So today I actually want to break down everything that's coming from Marvel in 2026. Movies, TV shows, animated shows, and video games. And just a quick clarification, I'm not gonna go into comics because that is a universe in itself that deserves its own channel. Let's start with the movies because even though there's only two movies coming out this year, they're going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting for Marvel and in completely different ways. First up is Spider-Man Brand New Day. Originally slated to be released in December this year, it switched places with Avengers Doomsday, and I can't exactly tell you why, but placement does matter. Now, this movie is going to follow up on the events of Spider-Man No Way Home, at the end of which Peter Parker literally lost everything: his identity, his relationships, and his place in the world. Nobody remembers him, and for the first time, Spider Man is truly by himself in the MCU. From everything we know so far about this movie, this is gonna be a really grounded, street level Spider Man story with characters including anti-heroes and villains coming straight out of the pages of Marvel Comics and the streets of New York. And I really feel that this time we're gonna see the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man rather than Spider-Man swinging through the multiverse. And this tells me something very important. Marvel isn't trying to outdo Spider-Man No Way Home, which is a beautiful movie in every single regard, but rather Marvel is trying to refresh Spider Man, it's trying to refresh Peter Parker before they chuck him into the next big MCU event. And personally, I love that decision. Now, after years of cameos, variants, and Spider Man feeling like a second fiddle in his own films, I feel this is going to be a much needed break for Spidey. Because, truth be told, Spider Man works best when his problems are personal. Rent, crime, responsibilities, consequences. That is essentially what Spider Man is all about. And MCU hasn't leaned enough into it yet. And yes, the cast and the characters that I spoke about, it feels really packed and really loaded. There is a risk that Marvel might be overstuffing this movie. But if MCU sticks to its promise of giving us a more grounded, realistic Spider Man movie, where Peter Parker gets to breathe and Spider Man gets to be himself, this could be exactly the kind of course correction that Spidey truly needs. And for me, this is one of those movies where the intent behind it excites me just as much as the movie itself. Alright, and now we dive into the big one: Avengers Doomsday. This isn't just another Marvel movie. This is the Marvel movie. And truly, Avengers Doomsday is gonna be the make or break moment for MCU going forward. And it's arriving after a really long period where a lot of fans felt overwhelmed, felt fatigued, or just disconnected from the larger narrative of the MCU. Marvel knows this. It is what they're trying to correct. And that is why Avengers Doomsday is such a big deal today. Now, there are genuinely promising signs here. The creative team behind this film includes people who understand ensemble storytelling and Marvel is clearly leaning on familiar faces and legacy characters to re anchor the audience emotionally. The teasers so far suggest a darker, more ominous tone, something closer to inevitability than spectacle. But there are also some real concerns, and I think it's important to be honest about them. Unlike Thanos, who had years of build up across multiple films, Doctor Doom is entering the MCU with a much shorter runway. And that puts a lot of pressure on this movie to do character work, world building, and event storytelling. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is gonna take a lot. And there's also the unavoidable question of the thematic and visual overlap, especially with how Doctor Doom and Tony Stark look almost identical. Now, that could be fascinating. It could feel like a gimmick if not done properly. Or Marvel could just go the James Gunn way and just retcon it altogether. And finally, there's the audience question. Marvel isn't trying to reward the fans that have stuck around. With Doomsday, Marvel isn't even trying to secure new fans. Avengers Doomsday is essentially meant to regain the fans that it's lost since Avengers Endgame. And that means that this project has to work well, even if you haven't watched any of the things that have come out on Disney Plus, or you aren't well versed with all those subplots that have popped up since Avengers Endgame. Now, this is a tough needle to thread. Impossible? Not at all. Now, that said, I'm hopeful. Not blindly optimistic, but I'm hopeful. Because Marvel doesn't need Doomsday to be the biggest movie ever made. They only need this movie to be focused, confident, and emotionally grounded. And if they get these right, just these three things, this could be the moment that MCU starts feeling unified and streamlined again. It won't feel as chaotic. It may not have to be bigger, grander, whatever. But a lot of fans are gonna stick around if they know that MCU has chosen a direction and it is sticking with it. So, yeah, only 2 movies in 2026, but both of them heavyweights. Spider-Man looks like a refresh on that character, whereas Avengers Doomsday feels like a test of faith. Now, which one of these movies are you most excited for? Please drop them in the comments. And with that down, now let's move on to our next section. Now let's talk about Marvel's TV slate for 2026, because this is where things get quietly interesting. For the first time in a long while, it feels like the TV shows aren't just coming out to prop up the movies. It feels like Marvel TV is finally gonna have its own identity and be able to stand on its own. After the Lord Chapek era, Kevin Feige and Bob Iger acknowledged and admitted one thing: that Marvel did start feeling like homework. Too many shows, too many mandatory viewings, and too much interconnectivity that didn't always add value to the fan experience. And honestly, as a fan, I felt that fatigue too. And ever since Kevin Feige and Bob Iger mentioned that Marvel TV is gonna have its own distinct identity from the larger MCU, I feel so relieved. Now, what's really encouraging about the 2026 slate is that it feels character first rather than lore first. And that is a much healthier space for Marvel TV to be in. Let's start with Wonder Man, which has to be the wildest card for Marvel TV this year. On paper, a superhero navigating modern day Hollywood could either be incredibly fresh or painfully awkward. Something that we observed with. Like, seriously, there's not a lot of middle ground here. But that premise also gives Marvel something that they haven't leaned into enough: satire. If this show actually commits to exploring celebrity culture, identity, and performance through a superhero lens, it could end up feeling very different from the usual Marvel TV formula. Now, I'm cautiously optimistic here, not expecting a game changer or anything. But if the characters feel really fleshed out, if the world they appear in feels really lived in, and if the humor lands naturally, this could be a very comfortable watch. And sometimes that is all that a show needs to be. Vision Quest is Marvel circling back to a thread they left hanging ages ago. And I'm actually glad it's happening, unlike some of the other projects. This series follows White Vision after the events of WandaVision, focusing on his search for memory, identity, and purpose. From what we know, it's expected to lean heavily into AI concepts with characters like Ultron, played by the legend himself, and other Marvel artificial intelligences potentially playing a role. Now, what really excites me here is the tone. See, this doesn't sound like a loud show. This sounds like an introspective, existential, and a strange show. And that is where Marvel tends to do its best work. And if Vision Quest manages to capture even half the emotional intensity and the weirdness of WandaVision and Agatha all along, I think Marvel's got a winner on their hands. Simple as that. Daredevil Born Again is a complicated one. Season 1 didn't fully land with me. I mean, that's just the truth. The pacing felt a little off, and for a great part of that season, it felt like the show didn't really know what it wanted to be. But the finale changed everything. And season 2 now has a real opportunity to build upon groundwork that's already been laid by season 1. The stakes feel clearer, the conflict with Kingpin seems more personal, and there's room for actual consequences. Something that Marvel TV has struggled with since the beginning. And if the season leans into the legal drama, the moral conundrums, and the cost of being Daredevil, rather than just setting up the next crossover, I think this is the right opportunity where Marvel delivers us the true revival of the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. And then there is the Punisher TV special. We honestly don't know anything about this project, and that is part of the appeal. Keeping Punisher in the special presentation format is a smart move. It allows Marvel to tell a short, focused story without watering down the character or stretching the narrative unnecessarily. All I can say is that this show needs to be raw, violent, and emotionally intense. No filler and no soft edges. And if Marvel commits to that, this could easily be one of my favorite things that Marvel puts out all year. So overall, Marvel's 2026 TV slate feels a lot more focused, a lot more intentional, and a lot less exhausting. Which is great news. These shows don't feel like mandatory homework. They feel like optional character-driven stories that could be your side missions if you're a full-time MCU fan like myself. And if Marvel sticks to this approach, not just for this year, but even in the future, I think TV could quietly become one of the strongest pillars for Marvel going forward. Alright, so those are all the shows that Marvel TV is dropping this year. Please don't forget to drop your favorites in the comments below. And with that down, let's move on to the next section. Okay, so we've talked about Marvel films and we've talked about Marvel TV. Now we need to move on to Marvel animation. Now, for any company that has emerged from the comic books, animation needs to be their bread and butter. And I have zero hang-ups in saying that for the longest period, DC has been the superior animation studio. But after the failings over the last 5 years, Marvel has started to course correct, and 2026 feels like an extension of that course correction. I wouldn't say that Marvel would be overtaking DC animation this year, but I feel like they're on the right path. Now let's start with the crown jewel of Marvel animation, X-Men 97, and season 2 is dropping this year. Season 1 was easily one of the best things Marvel dropped in recent years across any medium. It managed to tap into nostalgia without feeling dated, respected the source material, and still told stories that felt emotionally charged and relevant. More importantly, it understood the X-Men. Like the original show, this one leaned into politics, prejudice, trauma, and consequence without sanding off the edges. And season 2 has some real momentum behind it. With the success of season 1 and considering where MCU is gonna be headed after the end of the multiverse saga, and how central mutants are gonna be to the MCU. So for me personally, this show doesn't feel like a nostalgia project anymore. It has started to feel like foundational storytelling. Now, the next animated show that Marvel's dropping this year is Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which sits in a very different but equally interesting space. And let's be honest, Spider Man fatigue is real. Between multiple live action versions, animated films, games, spin offs, and constant marketing, Spider Man has gone from being Marvel's most relatable character to becoming the corporate mascot for Marvel and Disney. And that is why season 1 worked to perfection for me. It did not retread the same origin beats of Spider Man. It introduced some lesser known characters, some original characters as well. And this show, amidst all the multiversal chaos, this show existed in its own universe. And this show took some bold, creative risks rather than playing it safe. Like, just to give you an example, when the first look for this show came out, I wasn't a big fan of the animation style. But 10 minutes into the first episode, that animation it grew on me. And the finale of season 1, it got me off guard completely. And I mean it in the best of ways. But like almost every creative project, when there are no expectations from season 1 but it ends up doing so well, suddenly there are expectations from season 2 to be even better. And that comes with a lot of added pressure. And adding to that, season 2 for this animated show comes out in the same year that we're getting Spider Man Brand New Day. The expectations are high, the comparisons are gonna happen, and the novelty factor is gone. But if the show sticks to its strengths, fresh storytelling, stylistic confidence, and emotional honesty, it can absolutely justify its place in an already overcrowded Spider Man landscape. What's encouraging about Marvel animation is that with the projects coming out this year, it doesn't feel like an afterthought anymore. It doesn't feel like a side project anymore. Like X-Men 97 feels like the spine of Marvel animation at this stage. Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man feels like this creative sandbox where they're experimenting with a lot of things that are going to be defining the upcoming animated projects. And if Marvel continues treating animation as a serious storytelling medium rather than, a side gig, I think there is some massive potential here. And if they actually stay on this path and if they take it seriously enough, beyond the movies, Marvel could be building up millions of fans. There could be a resurgence of Marvel fans who are currently in school who would grow on to support this franchise for years and years to come. Now, which of these two animated projects are you most excited for? My comment section is waiting for you. And with that down, now let's move on to the final section of this video. Now let's talk about gaming, because if Marvel excitement lives anywhere outside the movies, it is here. Historically, Marvel games have been very hit or miss. For every standout title, there were multiple rushed or forgettable ones that existed mostly to cash in on a release window. But that has changed in recent years, and 2026 feels like Marvel's finally started paying some attention. Let's start with the big one, Marvel's Wolverine. This is the studio that redefines superhero games with the Spider-Man game for PlayStation. Not just in terms of visuals, but in how movement, combat, and character all work together. Giving that team Wolverine immediately signals a very different tone. Unlike Spider-Man, Wolverine isn't about elegance or agility. He's brutal, relentless, and personal. From what we know so far, the game will take Logan into locations like Madripoor and Genosha, which opens the door for darker stories and morally grey spaces. Insomniac understands how to build systems that serve the characters and not overpower them. And if they get this right, this won't just be another Wolverine game. This would be the Wolverine game. Or rather, it would be the definitive Wolverine experience. And yes, absolutely. I love Insomniac, I love Spider-Man, I love Wolverine. So if I have to sacrifice beers for a month just so I can play this game on day one, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Alright, now the next game on the Marvel slate for this year is Marvel 1943, The Rise of Hydra. And this game is fascinating for me for very different reasons. The game is set during World War II. It features Captain America and Black Panther as the two lead characters, teaming up to fight the rise of Hydra. Right away, that's an era and a pairing that we haven't gotten enough of. But even more than that, what really sells this game is the creative leadership for me. The game is being led and written by Amy Hennig, who previously also worked on the Uncharted games. That tells me this project is likely to be story first, character driven, and a cinematic experience, not just another action heavy superhero game. And we don't know a lot yet, but the premise alone, historical setting, legacy characters, and a focused narrative makes this one of the more interesting Marvel projects on the entire slate. Alright, so those are the two games coming out of Marvel in 2026. Which one are you most excited for? Is it the open world Wolverine experience where you go to fantastical lands with a lot of violence and a lot of gore? Or are you excited about the historical world where you see two bigwigs like Captain America and Black Panther fighting together? Please drop your thoughts in the comments. Alright, so when I came up with the idea for doing this video, I thought it's going to be a really short video, like how do I really expand it? But considering the volume of things coming out of Marvel this year across mediums, I feel this is going to be a good year for Marvel, and this is going to be a great year for all of us fans, whether you're into movies, TV shows, games, or animation. Alright, so that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, share this video with your fellow Marvel fans, and subscribe to TMB for the latest and the best in superhero pop culture and cinema. Up next, I'm gonna be discussing what's coming out for DC this year. And just like this video, I'm gonna be going into the movies, the TV shows, the games, and the animated projects. So stay tuned to my channel and don't forget to subscribe so you get notified as soon as that video drops. Until next time, this is the Millennial Bard signing off. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.